Topping Talks.
Let's see it.
105 hours a week, can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies and ExpressVPN. Topping Talks is also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and much, much more. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder twice a day. Gotta say, he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, are you part of the 3.6% of Americans who still care about their privacy? If you are, then Perfect ExpressVPN can assist. Even though 96% of stats are made up on the spot, ExpressVPN does give a 100% guarantee via their 30-day back money guarantee. Now, without further ado, today I'm proud to say I'm interviewing Jorge Cordova, who is the founder of Proto Technologies, as well as the vice president of the board of directors of Our Daily Bread Denton. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Jorge.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I was going to say, winding back the clock a couple of years, how did you first get into IT?
Well, it's been a lot more than a couple of years. I kind of fell into it. I was studying at university and working at a mall back when you could actually put yourself through school working at a mall.
That was the thing. Now people are in debt for 10, 20, 30 years.
That's true. So at any rate, a new concept opened in the mall, which was video. This is when video first came out because I'm older than dirt. Mm-hmm. So when video came out, there were the big screens and the VCRs and laser discs, all that kind of stuff. So there was a group of people that were basically visionaries that decided to take that and turn it into a storefront type concept, and that's where I went to work and I met the folks and all that. So now fast forward, the PCs started to come out. What happened was originally Apple was this kit that you bought. Yeah, you did plywood and you put together this kit. It was
the Apple One.
Yeah, it was more for the hobbyist, right? Yeah. So then what happened is Apple IIe came out. IBM brought out their PC, and there was Osborne, which was the luggable. Yeah. It was a
suitcase.
It was a suitcase.
Yeah.
You rip your arm out trying to carry it. Had a tiny screen that had to move around.
You had to be in shape.
Yes, exactly. So these guys said, let's do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Let's turn this into a retail type of business. Mm-hmm. And so then I went to go work with them. All right. And so that's where I first got introduced to it. You get trained on the computers and all that sort of thing. And at that point, I dropped out of school.
Really?
A lot of people in my generation dropped out of school because what was happening is the industry, not only was it born, it was growing at a much faster rate than you can certainly keep up with at the university level. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was over there studying Fortran 4. I doubt anybody even knows what it is anymore.
Oh, what now?
Yeah, exactly. But at any rate, so at that point, I got probably the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. It was from my grandfather, who really is my hero when it comes to business. Anyway, he told me, work your way up the food chain. Mm-hmm. Now, at first I thought, well, that means just moving up within a company. But he said, no, what that means is moving from retail to distribution to manufacturer, that sort of thing, and work your way back to where all this stuff's coming from. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to do that. I went from a retailer to a distributor to manufacturers, and then eventually I started working for startups. Mm-hmm. So, and that's really was the best piece of advice I could have gotten.
Absolutely.
So, at any rate, like I said, a lot of us dropped out of school. The Bill Gates of the world and Steve Jobs, which I do not put myself in their category. I'm just saying it's an example of people that dropped out of school. So that's really how I got into the industry. Learned it a little bit at a time as it developed.
And then what was your first role? Was that video store? Were you selling IT, or were you diagnosing equipment, or what was it like?
Well, at the video store, actually, I was working as a cashier behind the counter.
There you go.
And I kept popping out of there until finally the manager goes, "Hey, you're selling a lot more TVs and video recorders and stuff than anybody in here." So they put me on the floor in sales.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I got to do sales that way. So that's what started it. And then of course going into the computer industry, I've always been in sales.
Oh, yeah.
So and whether it's as a frontline salesperson or managing salespeople and that sort of thing, usually working in a team with an inside rep, a pre-sales engineer, and me as the sales rep, usually working in a team like that in tandem. If you get one of those teams working well, you can really do a lot of volume.
Oh, absolutely. That's when you have the best results. When I was in inside sales at HPE, they used to have that methodology and that structure. They change every couple of years with new leadership. But the time we hit our quota and did the best was when we had the inside sales rep, you had the field rep, you had a dedicated engineering resource, and you all worked in tandem to kind of your reps going to be in this city, they're going to be in Iowa City, or you're going to set 5, 10, 13 appointments with all those customers when they're there to maximize their time. And that when you're part of the team, that's really when you thrive. Unfortunately, depending on leadership, they'll say, oh yeah, now inside sales only touches these accounts, field sales has separate accounts, so it's not really a team like it is at other times.
Well, and sometimes you find people fighting over the commissions on a specific deal, and that's not helpful.
Or you sometimes don't get paid for a year or more.
Well, once you create a type of team where everybody's getting paid on outcome, then you really can have a division. And so, for example, I worked at a company where we had it was a company where we had scanners. And then we had high-end systems to defend wireless networks.
Really?
Okay? You can't sell that over the phone, but you can sell scanners over the phone.
True.
Right? Depending on the size of the deal. So because we're all being paid out of a pool, I would concentrate on those larger deals, and the inside reps then taking down all the smaller stuff because you got to shoot rabbits and squirrels you can eat while you're hunting big game, right?
Precisely, yep.
And so working together as a team like that, we were one of the most successful teams in that company.
So what company was it, if you don't mind me asking, or manufacturer?
Or
was it a reseller? Or?
It was a manufacturer. It was a startup.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is it, out of curiosity, going throughout your career, what was your favorite manufacturer that you worked for, or what are a couple of the highlights?
Boy, that's hard to say because a lot of them were fun. Startups in general were my favorite.
Yeah.
And startups are, and you and I have talked about this before, startups are either really successful or they fail spectacularly. There's not like an in-between at all, but those were my favorite. Even though they're high pressure, I kind of thrive on high pressure.
Oh,
so it was nice. And it's a smaller group. Generally you're going to split the U.S. between 2 or 3 teams.
Yep.
So you're covering large territories, but there's a lot more camaraderie, In that environment, you want to be number one and beat everybody, but you want to beat them by just a little bit because you want everybody performing.
Exactly.
You can't have weak links in a startup, especially in early stage startups.
Oh, absolutely. Or small businesses. You got to thrive. You sink or swim.
Right.
And then I think you went over to Cisco for a little bit as well.
Yeah, that was pretty early on. I was working at a company called Proteon, and they had invented Token Ring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which we don't use nowadays. Actually, they invented a lot of stuff that they ended up not capitalizing on. And so one of the things was a router. They had come up with the concept of a router, and theirs was on a PC and eventually became a piece of hardware. But they decided that they were going to concentrate strictly on Token Ring. And at that point, I thought, well, by then I was really selling a lot of routers because it made sense. Before that, we didn't have anything that could divide up the network. And before routers, what would happen is you had a wire, literally a wire going from desk to desk.
Oh my gosh!
You might put in a repeater, or to be able to go further, or a bridge that was stopping, some of the traffic that was broadcast type traffic and that sort of thing. But then the router comes out. Now I can truly customize what's going on. Because if the destination and source address are on the same side of the router's going to stop that traffic. And so now all of a sudden that allowed us to have quieter networks because the networks were getting so loud with traffic, they were becoming unusable. So Cisco obviously was heavy into that. And so when I found out they weren't going to go down that path, I went and got a job at Cisco.
Yeah.
Because it's what made the most amount of sense.
Makes sense. Then I remember a couple years later you went over to Aruba Networks.
Yeah, actually, I was working. There was a startup that got purchased by Aruba, and I went over to work in that division. Before that, I had been doing startups. I was not in Aruba as a startup.
Yeah.
So I went to work there for a while, and that's how I ended up connecting into the whole security world. As it started really beginning to blossom there. And they had a product called ClearPass. Now, ClearPass was a very complicated security program.
Oh, yeah.
However, it is very, very strong, capable product, you know. I always liken it into the space shuttle, right?
Yeah.
Space shuttle super complicated, but it can get you into outer space, right?
True.
Same thing. However, because it was so complicated, it was hard to implement. So that's the first time that I rolled out and created my own company because we needed to have people that were knowledgeable enough to be able to execute on all the dire details that it could do. And that really required true consulting business. So we created a business strictly around the consulting and the execution on that product.
And that was Proto?
Yes. No, that was Centurna.
Oh, Centurna. Okay,
Right.
got it.
Right. And that's really what we concentrated on.
I was going to say that used to be one of the most popular tools at the time. And it did it pretty darn well, too.
Yeah, it really did, if you knew what you were doing.
True.
I mean, it could be a boat anchor or it could be the second coming, practically.
Right? Kind of like Cisco ICE. It's deployed, allegedly, at like 3 locations. Maybe. Possibly.
I'm not going down that path.
No? And then what inspired you to go off and start Proto Technologies?
Well, it was a natural evolution from Centurna over to Proto Technologies, which was much broader based, and I started getting a lot more into project management, which was very, very interesting because now all of a sudden you take the knowledge you have from being on the manufacturer end and are more representing the customer, which puts you in a position where you can really tie in together a variety of technologies to do something comprehensive for the customer. You know, the customer generally starts off with a design, provided you're not, if you're inheriting a network, you got to design it and figure out how you're going to work things in. But you have a design that really meets what the customer wants. And so what you're doing is you're playing in the middle, meaning that you're making sure that things are being executed on the way they need to be. And by the way, project management is on site.
Oh, yeah.
That's not sitting behind a computer playing with charts.
True.
So you're on site making sure that those are executed right, and that the customer, on the other hand, is seeing exactly what they want is what's being delivered. You know, there isn't a sign off until the customer says, yes, I'm satisfied. That's exactly what I wanted. And then things get signed off on. Well, you're in the middle driving that, you know, keeping it from turning into the never-ending project on one end. On the other end, making sure things are being delivered as they said they were and that they do what they said they were going to do.
What was the biggest highlight of that part, or what was your favorite story or project that you came across throughout the years?
My favorite project is actually at Our Daily Bread.
Oh, yeah? Tell me, so what is Our Daily Bread?
Our Daily Bread is a organization that works with those that are food insecure. So we work with the homeless, the working poor, and really it's about feeding, clothing, you know, providing a place for people to sleep. And if I put it all together, what it is we provide hope to people that really are hopeless.
That's incredible. And then, so how do you first hear about it? And then what inspired you to kind of get more involved? And what does it entail being on the board? What is that process like?
So the way I found them is we were already contributing to them. We had found through our church, they were, our church was one of the founding churches of Our Daily Bread. And so I was already donating to them. And so then I started ramping down work-wise and started moving more towards retirement. So I went over there and volunteered some, did some work, and then some folks asked me if I was interested in being on the board. Actually, the executive director talked to me, and then she grabbed me and took me over to the president of the board, and they kind of wrestled me down on the ground, and before I knew it, I was on the board. And being on the board is actually interesting. There are many different types of styles that you see on boards. Our board is very active. Everybody there is active. And what we try to do is have a variety of skill sets on the board so that you can have more a comprehensive understanding of situations you're getting into, whether it's a person like me doing IT, or we have a person who's a consultant in food services that can help with that end. You know, we have facilities guys, a wide variety of folks that are a part of the board, and together we form a comprehensive whole. You know, and so as a board, we set a strategy, and we are the person that's looking at annual budgets and things like that, and that sort of approval. We obviously aren't day to day. That's what our executive director is. We have an outstanding executive director. and she runs the place day to day. So, and so we meet once a month. We go over, what happened over the last month. We look at budgets. We look at actual finances. But more importantly, we look at statistics. How effective are we being? And then what kind of issues may come up that need to be resolved, that sort of thing. So that's how the board works there.
And what was it like starting from scratch with the Greenfield project of, deploying infrastructure and designing the whole infrastructure plan for the new site?
Well, what happened was originally we were two separate organizations. There was Monsignor King, which was a shelter for emergency shelter for the evening. And the way that got started is Monsignor King had a church, and during a time when there was a ice storm, and
Inclement weather?
I want to start over. I can't do that.
Hey, come on, keep going. You got it.
So what happened is there was inclement weather, and so he opened the doors to the church and let in the homeless folks. And after that, he developed a heart for taking care of folks. So that was Monsignor King. Now, our daily bread, the way it got started, originally we were having a lunch that we were serving out of the fellowship center of St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church up in Denton.
Yeah.
And that grew. And it started growing and growing, and then we started serving breakfast, and then we started saying, well, we've got these people here for a long period of time. We started saying, well, why don't we bring in partner agencies? They set up a desk, and that way there are different services. And so over time, the services grew and grew and grew, and then we merged with Monsignor King. At that point, we're completely overrunning everything, so we needed our own facility. So the city of Denton gave us a building that we could use as one of their buildings that they gave us to use, and we took that thing down to the studs and redid the entire thing.
Really?
Yeah, which brings me to the project you were talking about. It was nice being Greenfield. I didn't inherit anything, except some old server in the corner. But
but wasn't a quarter inch of dust in some of the switches and technology that they needed, but it had been working kind of.
Well, and there was a tiny, almost like a mom and pop operation. Now all of a sudden we've got a much larger operation. So it was nice, but you had to manage a bunch of different pieces. So it first starts with the wiring infrastructure, which I will say, if you're going to run a wiring infrastructure and you're running it from scratch, go ahead and pull extra drops.
Yeah.
It's much harder to try and run drops later.
A lot more expensive too, I bet.
A lot more expensive. You don't know what's in the walls. You run into all kinds of stuff. So anyway, we put in the infrastructure. Then we have a switch fabric in place.
Nice.
We put in wireless as well as the wired network. Put in the phone systems. We put in a paging system. Believe it or not, those are two separate vendors.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems like the easiest thing to, like, if you're doing one, why not do the other?
Yeah, you would think. And integration isn't the easiest thing on earth either, which is surprising.
And what's the main use for paging system?
Well, in case we need to, a lot of it has to do with emergencies. If there's an emergency, we need to page across the entire building.
Really?
Yeah, there could be an occasional emergency, or if we're hunting somebody down that we know is in a particular area, there's that. Because it breaks out into zones, or you can do the whole building at once,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that is the paging system, and then we put in security. For security, we have two types of security. First of all, we have cameras. We have 72 cameras.
72?
Yeah, covers the inside and the outside. We try and cover every square inch of the building.
That's a lot of surveillance.
Yeah, well, you have to really be careful with the folks that can be there, or other. You can run into just about anything, as you can well imagine. So our cameras have both audio and video and do infrared as well. So even if a wing is closed, like for example, we have the wing where our offices are and that sort of thing. Well, it's closed at night. All the cameras are on.
Really?
Running infrared.
Because it's a 24/7 facility, right?
Yeah, the facility is 24/7, and we're trying to be comprehensive. So we have the emergency shelter, just like Monsignor King originally had. We take in around 178 people a night.
Per night?
Per night, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, the homeless situation is pretty serious. If there's inclement weather, like when it gets, it's 100 degrees outside or it's 20 degrees outside, we can add cots and increase our capacity some. So that's one wing that we have. And then we have a large kitchen and a large dining area. So we're able to feed people. We feed 700-800 people a day.
700 to 800?
700 to 800 meals a day.
That's still 700 to 800 meals.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, and the thing is that we don't just work with the homeless; we have the working poor. Like we have people there sometimes that they have jobs, they have a place to stay. Just need a little bit of extra help to be able to make ends meet. Maybe 2 or 3 meals a week or something like that. So it's a wide variety of folks that we feed. Then we have another wing where we've brought in partner agencies, and that's all the services, so you can find it all in one place. One of the barriers to entry for folks is that when they have a problem, they have to go, we're going to go to one place for one facility for this service and another facility across town for another service, another facility, and it just becomes this mess that's really difficult to execute. And what we do is we put it all in one wing, in one building, so it allows people to be able to go to one spot. We assign a caseworker, and then we can help them get all the services and things that they need.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it's really helpful. I mean, some of the things are surprising that you need that you wouldn't think of, like an ID, something as simple as an ID. Well, you can't get a house without an ID, So it's simple things like that as well as more complicated things. But really, it's including we have a work program where we're able to teach people called Ready to Work program, help them learn how to work and take them all the way through the point of being able to get them a job.
That's awesome.
Well, the whole point is to try to get people up off the ground from homelessness all the way to housed.
Yep.
Right? That's the key. Are we going to be able to take everybody that far? No. But a lot of it boils down to trust. If you notice, when we talk about our folks, we don't talk about clients, we talk about guests. And part of that's respect. The more respectful you are, the more they're going to trust you. The more they trust us, the further down the road we can get them. Whether it's training, maybe it's financial literacy, whatever is needed to be able to help them get further down the road. Now, we have another wing, it's transition wing.
Oh, really?
And that's folks that now are pretty far down the road. They're saving money. It's the last step before you are housed. So that once they hit that wing, anybody hits that wing, the success rate is extremely high. So we're going to be able to get them housed or moved out of that wing.
Is that where they have a room that's or a section that's dedicated to them full time for a little bit? Because I remember, every night you have everyone come in, and sometimes it's sporadic. It might be someone needs a place for a day, and it's not really reserved, so to say. Is the transition part of the building, is that for when it's a little bit more kind of not locked in, but they're there for a couple of days? They have some consistency, and they're just about to get to that next level, so to say?
Well, it's longer than a couple of days. They do have their own place. And it's not like the emergency shelter is a first come, first served kind of thing.
That's what that was like.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas transition is not. You have your own, room, and, you have roommates, but you have your own room, you have some stability there. And then that way you go to work, you come back, and, you don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep that night. So it has that consistency. Obviously, we want to know that they're working, verification. And then we also know what their work times are, to make sure that they can get into that building and be in it. And we keep it very separate, locked from the rest of the place, not locked from them, but from people going in there, because we want to keep those folks on the path that they're on, and so we have a lot of success out of there, and people really are growing and literally almost out the door.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what kind of success rates are you talking? Just like ballparking.
80, 90%.
That's incredible.
It's really, really high. If you hit that, you're liable to, you're gonna be housed.
That's incredible.
And you got to put in from your part. Now, there are occasionally things that are a little different, like you might have somebody that, they lost their apartment and they're going to go move in with their sister in a couple of months, and that's a place where we can transition somebody like that as well. Now, the only thing we don't do are families. We don't do families, no kids, that sort of thing. We really focus on adults.
Yeah. And out of curiosity, what do you think is most beneficial? Because remember, it's almost like a it's a Navy ship, or it's so self-contained. I was surprised. One of the things I didn't think about, but makes a lot of sense, is just like the barber, like the mobile barber room where they can go in and help kind of get tailored up for an interview. And that's that's a good idea. I didn't even think about that, but it makes total sense.
Yeah. Well, when you look at even the day-to-day stuff that we provide, place to sleep, we've got showers, we've got hygiene products, we've got clothes, we've got laundry, so a person can work and be able to have this comprehensive service. mean, you can't go get a job if you're carrying everything that you own on your back. You know, it's really difficult.
It's
you
an
know,
awkward interview.
It is an awkward interview.
And so I'm sure in some cases it gets you, even if they don't disqualify you, to your face, they're saying no, they might think that in their head and disqualify you for the job just based on their perception.
It's true.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, there are a lot of people that that I've spoken to that before they came along with us, they'd go to do a job interview, for example, and they'd take all their worldly possessions and hide them in different places in the woods.
Really?
Yeah, and then they hope to God it's still there when they come back, you know? And so
I can't imagine the stress of trying to talk to someone and trying to do an interview and trying to get that job, and while you're at the same simultaneous time thinking you might have your stuff stolen. It might not be there. Your worldly possessions might just disappear.
Right. Well, you might even get the job and your stuff disappears. You know?
That too.
Because it's not like you get a job and then tomorrow you're in an apartment.
Oh, true.
You know, it's a road.
Yeah. I could say most jobs, I think an overwhelming majority of jobs in the United States is like every other week or 2 week pay period. So it's like you get paid day one.
Right.
So it's always those delays built in.
Well, and you see a lot of people that work that live in their cars. You know, that's part of the decision. If you think about the decision process, if you can't make ends meet, the first thing you get rid of is the house.
Yeah.
Because you can drive the car to work.
True.
You can't drive your house to work.
Yep.
So you see that with people living in their cars and they all have jobs, you know, and it's just that it's hard to make ends meet. It costs for a family of four, it costs roughly $64,000 a year for a family. Well, I'm not talking about, perks, and we're not going to Disney and all that kind of stuff. We're talking, food, shelter, all that sort of thing. Well, if you think about it, with minimum wage, would you make a little over $15,000 a year? So you get mom and dad working together. That's 30-some odd thousand a year if you have. So then they each get two jobs
before taxes.
Before taxes, and they're making 60-some odd thousand a year. That's over $30 an hour. So that becomes very, very difficult because now you're in a situation where mom and dad are both working full-time jobs. Who's raising the kids? And I'm not talking about that who's babysitting or anything like that. I mean, who is literally raising your kids? Because you don't have time for that. Everybody's always working.
True.
So there's a lot of that going on in the United States, and really it's a worldwide problem where things are just getting difficult for people to make ends meet, and they're having to make some serious sacrifices. And unfortunately, sometimes the family is what ends up really losing out of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's astonishing looking back and talking to my parents and grandparents and like how much you could have had with a single income household at the time. I mean, back when the U.S. dollar was worth something, and a lot of other variables, but it was astonishing. You could have a nice car, a good house with having a single family income. Like my grandpa worked at a aluminum foundry in Michigan way back in the day, and they didn't live in extravagance, but they had a couple of cars, they had a little house in a nice little suburb of Detroit, and now it's getting more and more difficult.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Being a single parent is almost impossible nowadays. We get a lot of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really difficult with single parents because, we come back to the numbers of how much money you got to make. And it's a lot, for a single parent to be able to take on. And, not everybody is fortunate enough to be in the computer industry.
That's true.
Or maybe it's unfortunate. I don't know. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to mention is, when I used to be one of those people, when you pull up to an intersection, you see somebody over there, begging for money. And I always wanted to just roll it down the window and scream at them to get a job. It's a bunch of drug addicts and drunks that don't want to work. Until you start working with the people, you start seeing who they are. That's not who they are. Yes, they exist. Everybody walking through the door isn't a saint. But I'll give you a couple examples of what I've seen. There was a kid who was 18 years old, senior in high school, getting the crud beat out of him every day. Just getting the crud beat out of him became so dangerous. He finally decided...
Physically?
Physically.
Was it at school? Oh, Jesus.
At home. Yeah, he's being seriously abused at home. And so he decided it was better for him to sleep behind a dumpster and walk to school every day.
Oh, my God.
And that's what he was doing, Well... That's where an organization like ours can step in and help. Give them a place to stay, feed them, They're still going to school. See, that's the thing about it. This is a person who's trying to do the right thing. They're trying to get their education and all that.
Yeah.
Sleeping on the streets. And see, now that's not a person I'm going to scream at to go get a job.
Oh, of course.
You know? There was another person, for example, that I read about recently who broke his shoulder. Went to the hospital, has a heart condition, so they couldn't really help him with that. His problem is he's waiting on his VA benefits.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So without the VA benefits, he can't do anything about it. The guy can't go work like that. And so now here's a person who's stuck that needs some sort of intervention to help them get on the other side of that. Whether it's helping them have a place to stay while they get, or managing the VA benefits, helping them navigate that, or at least providing some well care, that sort of thing, really trying to help them out of the mess that they're in. That's how people can end up homeless. Heck, most people don't have more than about $600 to $1,000 saved up.
I was going to say, I should know the statistic by now, but I remember every couple months we'll read that statistic. And again, this is a huge margin of error, but it's like between 40%, 60% of Americans don't have more than $400 or $500 in their savings account that they could use for an emergency.
Well, I used to be involved with another organization, and their job was their mission was to keep people from becoming homeless in the first place. It's a lot more expensive to rehouse someone than it is to help keep somebody from losing their home in the first place. I bring it up because I remember there was a dental hygienist there that, as a client, that she had a serious medical problem and she couldn't pay for it, just didn't have the money, plus can't work.
Yeah.
So now there she is stuck, And so that's one where intervention made sense. We put in some money in there to be able to help pay for the medical bills that then got her up off the ground so she could continue on her career.
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is that's not somebody, sitting on the corner panhandling. We're talking about dental hygienists, And, some people think, oh, well, it's just day laborers, although they do have their issues, and I don't mean to minimize their situation, but things are getting bad enough out there that you're seeing more and more people becoming homeless that are working.
Yeah.
They just can't make ends meet.
And then I remember you were telling me the overall number of homeless is increasing, as well as the demographics. Like in terms of, it's not just one industry. It's like it seems like a lot of people of a lot of backgrounds are struggling more and more.
Hey, United Way keeps what they call a dashboard. That's real interesting. If you get a chance, you should go out there and look at that dashboard. Maybe we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And they are tracking everything monthly, and then they have an annual look. And if you look at the graphs of first-time homeless versus chronically homeless, and chronically homeless are people that have been homeless 12 months or more over a 3-year period. The brand new first-time homeless people, the chart just goes up like that.
Really?
Everything else is kind of steady. It goes up and down a little bit, but the first time is unbelievable how much it's going up.
Really?
Yeah, it's really getting worse and worse. Things are getting more and more expensive. People aren't making more money necessarily, and so it's getting tougher and tougher to make ends meet.
40-year hyperinflation isn't helping anyone. It's astonishing. Just look at the average cost of the same product, the same thing, and it's just everything's gone up exponentially.
It's true.
And then you also have shrinkflation, where I'm sure it's the same, maybe it's the same price point, but there's less content in the bag of, whatever you're buying, or there's less drink, or, it looks like the same, but it's really not.
Now, I'll make a tactical grocery run sometimes, and I pay the bill, and I go, you kidding me? That's what I used to pay for a week's worth of groceries just a few years ago.
Oh, it's insane.
And I'll tell you what we get a lot of, it's really fixed income people that have one of the worst problems of all. So we're talking about elderly, we're talking about veterans, people with disabilities. A really large percentage of the folks that are homeless are people with disabilities.
Really?
The chronically homeless, the vast majority are people with disabilities or the mentally ill. And so when you look at those kind of demographics, that's not somebody you can go scream at to go get a job. When you see a person that's mentally ill, for example, you got to solve that problem first. You and I were talking about before the show, there's this cycle that you see people in where they need to be on their meds to get a job, but they need a job to afford their meds.
Yeah.
So they get stuck in that cycle. Being able to intervene where prescription assistance can really help break that cycle. But you see a lot of people stuck there. And there are other people that they can't get out of that.
Yeah.
They're just mentally ill. There's no way to get them to the point where they're going to be able to work necessarily. They need help. Unfortunately, there isn't just a whole lot of help out there. People fall through the cracks. They basically get thrown away.
And I think that's also something you guys provided as well, right, with the prescription services?
Prescription services. We also have well care, which is pretty helpful. But more importantly,
what's well care for the folks who might not know?
Doctors come in and you do all the preventative care stuff.
That's awesome.
How we normally go, once every year, 6 months,
Some people, yeah.
If you're forced to. But it's your regular checkup is really what well care is. And so we have folks that can do that. So that helps with all that. But more importantly, we have MHMR, a relationship with them.
And who are they?
Mental health and mental resources. And so those folks help work with the mentally ill. I mean, that is their job. And so they are in our facility. And so they're able to work with those folks and help them get the help that they need.
That's awesome.
And you'll see folks like that in our facilities, happy, well cared for.
All right. And out of curiosity, what's the number one employer, or what's, when we're helping transition these folks, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there, but I mean, where do you see kind of the biggest success rates in placements?
Well, the city of Denton is very, very helpful with the homeless population. They have a real heart to help for their community, which is an interesting thing to see. You don't see that every city like that. Yeah. And they really do put money and resources into it. And the reason I bring them up is that they can help provide jobs, whether it's parks and recreation or sanitation, that sort of thing. They will help us at times with that, with that sort of work, so they can go through a Ready for Work program and then have a place to go.
Excellent.
To work, yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
It's like I said, we try to be comprehensive. At the end of the day, what we provide is hope for people.
Absolutely. And what was the biggest thing that really shocked you once you started to get more involved in the organization?
A lot shocked me, but I guess really more than anything is who they were. Who were the people that were there? When I saw a lot of disabled people, I saw a lot of elderly people, that just had fallen through the cracks and, living on the streets. I was shocked by that part of it. The people that we normally see on the street corners and what have you, very, very tiny part of the population. So the population, we don't see them.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most shocking, eye-opening thing to see, that the population was very different from what I thought it was. And you see a lot of people are trying.
Yeah.
They're trying. It's not somebody just sitting around, where we provide them a lifestyle. We don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's people that are trying and just can't get there.
And where do you see the future of the organization? Because I remember we were talking, it seems like there's more and more people who need it as a goal to expand to another building. What do you need to succeed? Do you need some volunteers to help you out, donations? What's the roadmap look like?
Well, the two main things we always need, we obviously need donations. It's not inexpensive to run this place, because it's fairly large.
It's a big building.
It is a big building.
A lot of people.
Yes, and it's a lot of people. Probably one of the things that we have the most difficulty with is volunteers. If you think about it, volunteers allow us to keep our costs down. And so we need 90 volunteers a day to run the place. We get maybe 40 or 50.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we only get about half or less of what we actually need.
It's pretty resource constrained, to say the least.
It really is. Now, I will tell you, volunteering is pretty easy, because you can go to our website. When you go to the volunteer page, you have to watch a little video, orientation video, and then it opens up and you can select, what do you want to do? There's a bazillion different jobs. Tell you what all it is. The shifts are 3 hours long. And you just click on what you want to do. It'll pull up about a year's worth of shifts, and you select what it is that you want to do.
That's pretty cool.
Let me tell you, you come once in a week, once in a month, once in a quarter. We need all of it.
And you also are able to give credits for college students? Because I know some college students in other organizations, sometimes you need volunteer credits as well.
Yes, we do. And we sign their paperwork and all that. We help them track. And we also have interns.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, we get interns for the social work program. We get them from the local universities.
Oh, perfect. And that website's, what is the website?
Website is ourdailybreaddenton.org.
Perfect.
Make sure you put the Denton in there.
I'll also put that in the description for everyone, so they can easily click it on YouTube or Spotify or wherever listening to this as well.
Oh, and be sure to put Denton. If you put Our Daily Bread without the Denton, you're going to a different place.
Yeah, we'll make sure the Denton's in there as well.
Good. Now, we'll mention one more thing. People like to volunteer for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And for Christmas. And that's wonderful, but we need people in July. We need people anytime, not just then. So, if you have a heart to serve or to help us out, find some month that's not a holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I was going to say, what do you like to do outside of your volunteering or outside of Our Bread Daily Denton?
Well, if you want me to spend the next 4 hours talking, I'll tell you about trail running.
Oh, yeah? What's that for the folks who don't know?
You know, I'd love to run on trail. Trails are, you basically run off-road. You're on hiking trails, equestrian trails, some off-road biking trails, basically things that people normally hike, and we run on those. And it's really neat experience. I used to run on roads, and it was fun, but what I discovered when I went to trail running is that it's a very different experience. It has a more spiritual component to it because you're really into nature, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about how quick I'm going to get from here to there. I'm enjoying the process of getting from here to there, you know. It's also really good exercise because you're not running in a single plane. You have to jump over stuff. You move side to side and rocks and stuff, and the occasional snake you have to jump over and that sort of thing.
Or a bobcat trying to kill you.
Yeah, or a mountain lion.
Yeah, that's what it was. You want to tell a story?
No, I see mountain lions on not super regular basis, but where I train by the house, I've seen 3-4 mountain lions.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of those things where I know twice it's happened where I'm running and I turn a corner and I look and I'll see a cat up there. I'm thinking, what is that, a bobcat? You know, it's a bobcat. I'm not too worried about it. I get closer and closer, and then you see that giant tail. The way you can tell them is they have this huge tail that comes down and comes up with a little black tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
So well, it's inspiration. Then you run even faster.
Yeah. No, that's when you start hitting air horns and you walk and you don't bend down so they don't think you're small, you know. But, yeah, that's happened a few times. It's not that big a deal. I'll tell you what I hate. I hate spiders and snakes. That's what I hate about the summer.
Really?
Yeah, snakes all over the place. And
That's true.
You know, at my height, you know, I'll run into spider webs. If you haven't noticed, you know, I'm over here looking so I don't, you know, trip on something. Here's a spider web, you know?
Yeah.
So those are the things I really hate the most, you know?
Where's the most unique place you run? Because I remember you used to do a lot of traveling for those runs as well.
Yeah, I've run in Alaska is probably my favorite place that I've run.
How do you get hooked on that? Or what gave you the idea to go to Alaska to run?
Well, you know, actually, we've been to Alaska, you know, as far as going on cruises and that sort of thing. And my wife and I thought, you know, okay, we did a couple of cruises. We know what's up here. Let's go check something really out. And so we went to Skagway.
Yeah.
Skagway's a tiny town, 300 residents.
Oh, wow.
600 total during the season because they get another 300 workers that are, you know, for the cruise ships and all that kind of stuff, you know, for all the attractions.
Yeah, seasonal.
Yeah. So it's really a trip because this place is designed to bring in a ton of cruise ships and all these people, you know, and you have these, you know, have all the, you know, here's the, you know, the old prostitute house, and here's this, you know, all the different things, you know, like, because it's an old mining town, right?
Oh, yeah, old distractions.
Yeah, so when everybody leaves, though, there's nobody there. I mean, it's quiet, you know. I remember my wife and I were first time we went there, we were walking along, and after a couple hours, we're like, look, a car. Like we had seen a deer or something. Anyway, when we decided to go to Skagway, that's when I started really checking out the trails and running around up there, and man, it was nice. Fortunately, I never ran into a bear.
I was going to say, that'd be my first concern is I know Alaska has bears and oil and nature.
I was worried about the bears, you know. Mostly I was trying not to come flying off of one of those mountains.
Oh, yeah. And I bet it's just beautiful, too. I've never seen a bad picture of Alaska. It looks amazing.
It is beautiful. I'll tell you what, that's another thing about trail running. You get to see beautiful stuff no matter where you are.
Yeah.
You know, one of the important things is, for me anyway, is to stop.
Oh, yeah.
Take a look at where you are. You know, it's absolutely beautiful. And I think I mentioned to you this before that as you get used to being out on the trail and running it, you start getting real smooth. I always talk about it being like water where you're kind of flowing with the trail. Yeah. Once you start looking more natural there, all of a sudden more critters start coming out. I started seeing a lot more animals, you know, and a lot more nature, and then you start getting more in tune to it. So it's a wonderful experience.
What was the most shocking or unusual thing you've seen when you're doing a trail run?
You mean other than doing a face plant and seeing the dirt way, way too close?
Exactly.
I've done that a few times. Well, it's hard to say because every day's a new experience out there. You know, I mean, I've come around. I'll tell you what. I'll give you a good story. I was running one time and I came around a corner and I saw a bird as tall as me.
A what?
Yes, I have to this day. I don't know exactly what I was looking at. That thing was huge, just looking at me. I'm
pterodactyl?
looking at it.
What is this?
He's got practically. He's looking at me. I'm looking at him. He's like, "What are we going to do?" So I go, "Well, take a step forward." Thing took off running. I'm like, "Great!"
Really?
So I went running. It was in front of me on the trail.
Yeah.
Running for, we must have done a quarter mile with him just plopping along. I don't know what the heck that was. But that was definitely the weirdest thing, one of the weirdest things I've ever seen.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, probably one of the worst things I've ever had was when I was in Alaska outside of Skagway. I was going up on this trail, and I reached this point where it was nothing. Well, you know, Alaska, everything's huge. It was nothing but these slick, huge rocks. And I was having to hold on to trees to get around them. Later, I realized that had I slid on one of those rocks, I would have come completely off that mountain.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, good thing I didn't realize that at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Most things that happened to me out there, I realized afterwards, going, "Oh my God, I did what?" You know?
I was gonna say, did you have like a satellite phone or a signal flare or anything on you when you were running out there? Or?
Well, obviously I carry a phone. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you should carry a sat phone. You know, and then I have air horn, and you know, and I'm got training in wilderness first aid, and I carry first aid kits and that sort of thing. Yeah, because the thing about it is you have to realize nobody's coming to get you. So if
That's
you
the
get
scary
hurt,
part.
well,
Yeah.
if you get hurt in the middle of nowhere, you still got to get off that trail. You still got to get to a trailhead.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot that you have to learn and do to be able to get that. I mean, it's all fun and games when you're running until you get hurt in the middle of nowhere. I remember one time I was running, and I'd gone out and I was turning back. I went under this bridge. For some reason, I decided wearing sunglasses in the shade was a good idea.
It looks cool.
I stepped in a hole that a horse had made and broke my ankle
Oh, jeez.
3 miles away from my car.
3?
Yes. So I'm on all fours looking for the closest trailhead, walking all fours. The sun's going down, and guess what happens when the sun goes down? All the predators come out, not to mention mountain lions, and I'm exactly what they're looking for. You know,
Oh my God.
So fortunately, I found a trailhead long before my car, and then I started calling around till I finally found somebody to come get me.
Oh my gosh. How did they just carry you out, or what was that like?
No, I crawled out until I could get to the car. And by the way, to add insult to injury, when I fell, I ended up falling into a pile of horse manure. So,
No, really?
yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, my daughter came to pick me up, and she had that look like, "You're getting in my car?" You know?
Sounds like you had a pretty shitty day.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Fun intended.
Funny, yeah, funny. But anyway, that's what I do when I'm not at Our Daily Bread or taking care of my parents. I'm out there running.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say we'll definitely have to have you on the show again sometime.
good. Maybe I won't blank out.
Perhaps, possibly. Thank you so much for coming on the show,
Thank
Jorge.
you.
I appreciate it. Thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to tune into the show. We greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to go to ourdailybread.denton.com so you can learn a little bit more as well. Donate if you feel so inclined. I absolutely recommend it, as well as sign up and volunteer for a little bit. Again, thanks for taking the time to listen. Don't forget to click that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to also tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe. You have a great day. Topping Talks.